The War Within dungeon and affix updates. Let's just say Blizzard's got it out for the tanks. Let's get into a little bit of this stuff. So, not only did they announce the new affixes, but we know there's a bunch of other changes coming to dungeon running in the rest of the War Within expansion. So here we go. Heroic and Mythic dungeons. We know these changes have come already. For normal, nothing has changed. We'll be seeing the 8 War Within dungeons available to be done on normal. The one thing I will say is you'll have follower dungeons as well, so you can always do that. Heroic. Let's get into Heroic chat a little bit because this did change. Heroic is basically now what a Mythic 0 is. So getting into Heroic will, be a slight increase in difficulty compared to what it was, but also an increase in what kind of gear you can get. Heroic was kind of useless. It had become that way. There really wasn't any reason to do Heroic after a while, and unless you were doing that first run. And so seeing Heroic change to what a Mythic 0 is today is pretty good. Starting with Season 1, the War Within Heroic Dungeon difficulty will feature our roster of seasonal dungeons. So you will get your seasonal dungeons rather than normal, which is just getting the 8 War Within dungeons. Now Mythic is where we really saw the changes here. Mythic tuning has been increased to what a plus 10 is. So starting at Mythic 1, that's basically a plus 10, and moving on from there, all the way up the chain. Sorry, 1 is 11, 12, 13. Basically, the increase in difficulty shot way up in terms of Mythic. But it also increased in terms of how things are going to work, right? And by that, I mean the new Mythic Plus affixes. So let's talk about those things a little bit. First of all, your Mythic Plus pool is going to be your 4 Dragonflight, your 4 War Within dungeons. So you're going to have your 4 War Within dungeons, and then you're going to have 4 older dungeons, which are Grimbatoll, Necrotic Wake, Mists of Turnascythe, and Siege of Borealis. So those will be our Mythic pool, but what are we going to be getting when we get into those? Well, we're still going to have Fortified and Tyrannical starting at a plus 2. At plus 4, we're going to get 4 new affixes, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then at plus 7, we'll get, the usual bursting, bolstering, and the rest of the like, which we'll also get into here. So affixes. Before we dive into the specifics of the new affixes, we would like to outline our goals and purpose for these affixes. Our overarching goal is to minimize the mechanical overlap between affixes and dungeon trash design in the current plus 4 affix bucket. We aim to achieve this through more passive approach, focusing on the following objectives. Shift the source of challenge to the difficulty to the dungeon itself by simplifying the affix design and emphasizing creature abilities. Reducing visual noise, nameplate clutter, and cognitive load on players during trash combat. I don't know how they're justifying nameplate clutter when they're talking about mana here. We'll talk about it in a second. And then allow for varied and context-specific gameplay decisions depending on the dungeon they are applied to. Okay, so let's talk about these. We've kind of danced around it enough. Let's talk about some of these. Here we go. Okay, so basically I screwed the recording up this morning and had to re-record it, so your audience little chat in the corner is currently gone. We're going to get right back to the regular recording, but first off, I wanted to go through the 4 new affixes with you guys, because it's very important. We have basically mana, casters that use mana, and non-casters that don't use mana. Essentially, that's what's going to be empowered week to week. So one week you're going to have your casters blasting your ass off, and the next week you're going to have your melee/non-mana users blasting your ass off. Now, whose ass is getting blasted? The tanks. Yeah, it's going to be the tanks. Let's read through these real quick. Okay, for Reckless, non-boss enemies without mana ignore 20% of the armor with their attacks. Whose armor are they ignoring? The tanks. You're going to get put on blast. That sucks. For Thorned, non-boss enemies without mana inflict physical damage to their attackers when attacked. Who are their attackers for the most part? Who's holding aggro? The tanks. Yeah, we're going to be the ones getting attacked. Absolutely wonderful. Attuned, non-boss enemies with mana inflict 20% increased magic damage. Who are they doing that magic damage to? We got a theme going here, guys. Yeah, follow me. Yeah, it's great. The tanks, of course. Now, as a Blood Decay, I got Anti-Magic Shell, so that might help with this stuff. Spell Reflex and things like that, but that's going to suck no matter what. And then for Focused, non-boss enemies with mana have 30% increased haste. That's great. What's their haste going to do? Increase their, how quickly they cast things. What are they casting on? Yeah, the tanks. Yeah, we're going to get totally blasted in this season. Add bolstering on top of some of these, and, the increased physical damage, Reckless with bolstering, I mean, you're going to get one-shotted. There's going to be a lot of one-shotting going on. It's going to absolutely suck.
So being a tank is going to require some extra skill. Now, there are some empowerments on the back end of some of these, and this is where you're going to start to see Blizzard trying to push different metas. So here it is. For Reckless, the armor of the mobs that you're fighting will be reduced by 30%, and they will take 10% increased arcane damage. Very nice for mages there. Mages are going to be, part of the meta that week when this is available. Thorned. The enemies you're fighting will take 10% increased holy and shadow damage. Now, holy and shadow, I mean, who's going to be doing that? You're talking about your paladins, your priests, your demon hunters. Those are going to be nice for those weeks, so those will be part of the meta on those weeks. For attuned, the enemies you'll be fighting will take 10% increased nature damage and 30% increased damage to bleed effects. Now, of course, that's going to be good for rogues, again, demon hunters. 10% nature damage, you're talking about shamans and druids, so those are going to be empowered on those weeks. A nice rotation for them. And then focused, we're going to have 10% increased frost and fire damage. Mages and shamans. That's what I read when I see that. You guys could throw in other things if you think of anything, but mages and shamans are the main frost fire damage dealers. They're going to be the ones doing it. Maybe you got Frost DK, obviously doing some frost damage as well. But really what Blizzard's trying to do here, and it's pretty evident, they're trying to rotate the meta. From week to week, they're trying to change the meta, so it's not a season-long meta, and rather a week-long meta, based on whatever affixes they're putting out. Now, whether that's the right move or not, I guess that's to be determined. We'll have to see, but I'll tell you one thing. That's not going to be the meta, and that's freaking tanking any of this shit in Season 1 of The War Within. It's going to absolutely suck. Tanks are going to have some thick skin and, thick cocks, but of course, if you're tanking, you got a thick cock. That's besides the point. Healers are going to have to heal extra on these tanks, and combinations of things like Reckless and Bolstering are going to be the shit of nightmares. That's basically going to lead to a lot of one-shots. This stuff's going to be tough. It ain't going to be easy. But it is what it is, and we're going to have to deal with it. And now back to your regularly scheduled Samiccus programming.
Okay, let's move on here. So with our new passive affix bucket set to replace the 4 that currently exist, the following affixes will retire, so we got Inflicted, Incorporeal, Entangled. Yep. You know what? I kind of liked some of these, though. Entangled was nice. Volcanic was nice. There was really just, move around, do your thing. I can't speak to Incorporeal because as a tank, I really didn't have that much responsibility to bear with those, so people who had to deal with that could speak to it more, but overall, Entangling and Volcanic, man, keep those were great. They were literally just movement mechanics. I didn't mind them at all, but they're gone now. And unfortunately, Sanguine and Bolstering are here to stay. Yeah, so we have Raging, Bolstering, Bursting, and Sanguine. Why Blizzard's keeping some of these, I don't know. I think the player base has been pretty avid about getting rid of some of them, and yet here they are. After many, many nerfs, finding ways to try to deal with them, they continue to push forward. Again, Bolstering, like I said, with a combination of some of these, where you're taking increased damage as a tank, plus Bolstering, my God. There are going to be some wonderful, wonderful keys broken at the end of these. Because they are broken at the moment. You can blame DK tanks for this. How are DK tank? No, I don't think so. I mean, they want to make tanking harder. They've made it very clear that they want to make tanking a little bit harder. But it also increases some, difficulty on the healers again, right? Healers are going to have to know when they got to pump. Watching mana in general is going to be a bigger thing with these keys, which again, to me, goes completely against cognitive load reductions, nameplate clutter reductions, and reduced visual noise. As of right now, the way Blizzard's game is run and the way, the current UI works, there's no way you can run a Mythic Plus without add-ons. There is no way. To visually see mana for every mob that you're pulling, the current game doesn't support that unless you have an add-on. So I don't know what the hell they're talking about reducing visual noise and nameplate color. This is doing the exact opposite. But again, we'll see how these goes. I'm sure there'll be some nerfs coming across as tanks get one-shotted and Bolstering weeks and things like that. They'll be playing with these numbers a little bit. They are what they are, and we'll have to deal with them. If you want to test and tank through these new brutal affixes, you could do so on June 13th. So, this is for the beta testers out there. June 13th, these will be available to be tested on there. You can get in and see how these are going to work. Again, maybe try Mage. I think Mage is going to be great for next season, looks like. Rogue should be decent. Even a Demon Hunter should be a pretty good one with some of these the way they're working.
Let's celebrate and suck some dick.
Yeah, indeed. Shadow Priests, Holy Priests, not Holy Priests, but Shadow Priests and Discipline Priests maybe. You'll have some nice things for paladins as well. But the main thing is, from what I see, demon hunters are winning and mages are winning in terms of DPS. PvP with the blues. Yes, Battleground Blitz is back on June 14th for beta testing. So you can test out the new Battleground with the blues. That's right, with the Blizzard employees, testing them out, seeing what it's like. So get in there and get that done. June 14th, again, will be your way to PvP in the War Within beta test realms, playtesting the rated Battleground Blitz and the Deep Hall Ravine, I should say. Yeah, so that'll be a nice thing for people who want to test out the PvP. Apple made a bunch of announcements yesterday, and believe it or not, World of Warcraft was included in them. Yeah, evidently Apple wants to offer more to gamers. They want to make their systems, their laptops, and everything else more appealing to gamers. And one of the ways they want to do that is offering more support, improved support, they said, for a variety of modern games, including World of Warcraft. What that means, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe more updates, things like that. Blizzard themselves have always kind of been, they support WoW on iOS, and it's been all right, but it's never really been a big thing for them. While the expansion runs well on the newer Apple Silicon chips, support for older generations AMD and Intel graphics cards have all but been abandoned. Still, the fact that the War Within is highlighted in the slides gives us hope that there will be more concerted effort to support players playing on Mac OS. So that's great for anybody playing on Macs. You'll get your chance to really get some better updates and more support on the back end for that kind of stuff. That's very nice.